This is the Convene podcast. My name is Maggie, Digital Media Editor. Planners share how they're being more intentional about helping their event participants make more meaningful connections. Architects of Connection, Part 1 of Convene's September-October cover and CMP series, written and read by Michelle Russell, Editor-in-Chief at Convene.
We used to extol the virtue of conferences and conventions as being places where serendipitous connections happen. But recent research shows that today's event participants want more. Post-pandemic, they are choosing to travel to events mostly to interact with peers and experts in their field, and secondarily for the education. They don't want to leave networking to chance, nor do they want overly programmed networking solutions. Here's how event organizers are balancing between the two, creating innovative and flexible spaces and formats that foster meaningful connections. Business is human. Since it launched in 2012, the C2 Montreal Conference, conceived by creative agency Sid Lee in partnership with Cirque du Soleil, has set a high bar for daringly different session formats, environments, and approaches to connecting diverse participants. How has that evolved? Anique Biliou was recently a presenter at a conference in Abu Dhabi for architects when she experienced total imposter syndrome, the CEO of Montreal-based event company C2 told Convene during a video interview. In the audience were some of the best architects in the world, she said. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing here? Biliou said she realized that other presenters were showing images of pristine environments, no humans, very beautiful lines, great Scandinavian feel. And it came to her. What we're doing, speaking as the head of one of the most forward-thinking business events in the world, is architecting human connections. As she reflected on that, Biliou said, she thought about how everything C2 does as an event company is around finding ways to multiply these connections that are inclusive of different job titles, hierarchy in a company, men and women, different cultures, different neurodiverse backgrounds, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, with moments of high energy and low energy. It struck her, she said, that it's C2's job to make deeper and more meaningful connections among its participants. When you look at it through this lens, she added, we believe that businesses don't do business together, humans do. Here's more of Biliou's take on the complex nature of making human connections and why it is such a wellspring of creativity for C2 organizers. How has networking evolved at C2 and in general? I think traditionally the way to treat networking in a corporate setting has been very transactional. The premise is like, I'm going to have a booth, hand out business cards, or I'm going to a cocktail hour sponsored by some brand that has a name on the bar and/or napkins. Our vision is, we believe, that humans connect, and we believe that humans do good together. We believe that commerce or economic impact is also driven by people meeting and doing business together. When we look at the power of creativity, and I think this is where a lot of what we do finds its source, beautiful environments have the power to inspire and to create things to talk about, to connect. Same thing with methodologies. When we think about workshops or master classes, it's once again providing a context. So a speaker, a topic, but then designing a methodology that gets people in groups working together. When you tackle a problem with someone, there's actually more of a chance that you'll find common points of view or knowledge that one can bring to another, and that you'll want to pursue the conversation after the activity. We see that we've provided the context for that connection. Same thing when you look at some of the signature experiences we're known for, like the Skylab, where we suspend people in chairs up in the air. Once again, if you're up in the air with someone you don't know at a business event, there's a lot more chance that you're going to keep that conversation going, or that you'll meet that person a day later at a cocktail reception, because we still believe in wine and food to have this conversation. How do you keep creating new and novel ways to connect year after year? When you ask us how we're going to still evolve, it's really centered on how do we multiply the number of connections that are happening at any given time during an event. When you look at KPIs for events, usually it's like, how many leads do we have? How much money did we generate? How much interaction did we get on social? How well did our content perform? It's all about that connection. It's either connecting people together to do business, or it's about connecting to an audience, like a digital audience that will be interested in your product or whatever. For us, it's really about finding the different formats, the way to leverage creativity that will get us closer to generating more of these interactions, which usually will end up being us reaching more KPIs, or growing the brand, or getting more ticket sales because we've connected in a way that was unique with our audience. Can you give us an example of a new format you tried this year at C2 in May? We had a neurodiverse lasagna lab. That was exploring the importance of being inclusive to different types of neurodiversity, as people were talking about their own neurodiverse profiles or situations that related to them while cooking lasagna. Why cooking lasagna? Because when you're cooking, when you're in contact with food, when you're sharing this beautiful moment with people, your guards are down, your barriers are down, and you are actually focusing on what you're doing rather than focusing on what should I be saying? What would look good in this context? I don't want that person to judge me. By stripping this, you are actually allowing yourself to be more authentic, and then you can create a real connection with someone next to you. One of the things we explored this year was when we approach a certain topic to have multiple points of view contribute to the conversation on stage. What that does is that it fuels your desire to keep talking about what you just heard, because there's a little friction, there's a little conflict, there's an opinion in there. It's not vanilla. You're like, oh, that person said that. I don't know if I agree, but that person said that, and I'm totally aligned. Are you? Then we had a quiz, which was an AI tool telling you if you were relevant or obsolete. We had people in the audience getting on stage, participating as if it was a televised quiz. We brought back Brain Date this year, and we had a bunch of really interesting food experiences and restaurants. Then some more traditional. We're not against a traditional good cocktail party with a great curated list of people mingling after a day that was filled with so many experiences and content. I think for us, it's just about the diversity of ways to connect and touch points that create this rich, fertile ground for friendship, partnership, transactions to happen. You spoke about high energy and low energy. How do you build those two extremes into the program? The Lasagna Lab, that's high energy because you're making stuff while discussing. You're in a group. There's this notion of you really need to be out there in the world in a way. Even if we hack a way to make people feel comfortable, you're still contributing. You're still in a social setting. On the flip side, we had an introspective lab, which was around language models and what has been our relationship to language, or even animals' relationship to language, and how will it evolve or change once we start having language models that are machine generated. That was very much about being in your own little bubble in a beautiful environment with a headset. Very introspective, very much about your thoughts. So less about having to perform or feel engaged in a conversation. We also have multiple lounges. Some of them are in high traffic areas where you could just walk around, see someone, stop and say hi. But some that were a bit more remote that allowed people to just take a bit of time to go through emails and, I don't know, Maybe take a little nap. We also did this within the restaurants we designed. Some of the restaurants were really open floor plans, giving you the opportunity to connect with people while you're eating. But we created small coves that allowed more intimate, private conversations. Same thing with our partner lounges, some of them facing out, part of them being more private. Then even in the programming, we opened up with a witch opera that was all about vibrations and this moment when you were in tune with something that was a bit spiritual, but then kicking it off with very dynamic content. You spoke about people making connections throughout the year. Any examples? Actually, two entrepreneurs who met in one of the Ferris wheels during C2 ended up founding a business together. They got married and they had a kid. That's the most extreme example. On the web, in addition to producing its flagship business conference, C2 in Montreal annually, the company produces experiences in white label for some of the world's top brands, C2's Annick Billiou said, and has a partnership with a core group to develop spaces that are meant to host meetings in a way where they're more collaborative, flexible, and cooler. Learn more at c2international.com. Higher Ed Advanced Networking. From its session for first-time attendees to constituent roundtables and connect and collaborate sessions, the National Association of College and University Business Officers annual meeting focuses on helping its 2,000 attendees find and connect with their peers. What we used to call networking was actually socializing. Barbara DiRocco, the National Association of College and University Business Officers, NACUBO, Senior Director of Meetings and Events, said about the association's annual meeting. And what happens at a break or a reception is people just tend to socialize with the people they came with or people that they already know, she told Convene during a recent video call, where she was joined by Randy Robertson, NACUBO's Vice President of Leadership Development. That's not networking. For the last 5 or 6 years, Robertson said, NACUBO has taken a more intentional approach, understanding that attendees want to connect with others for different reasons. We've been bringing people around together, things that they have in common, he said, whether it be women leaders or leaders of color or LGBTQ leaders or young professionals, or if they were leaders from small institutions versus large public research institutions versus community colleges. We've always tried to focus on how we get those folks together to learn from one another and also feel like they have a camaraderie and a peer group they can talk to. DiRocco said that members want networking to be both organic and also a bit structured. When you're gathering with 2,000 plus people, she said, it can feel like you're trying to wade through a sea of everybody trying to find your peer colleagues. You want help to guide you. Here are some ways NACUBO has done that. Navigating NACUBO first-time attendee session is held right before the opening event on Saturday evening. There are 250-ish folks who attend that, who now have people to go to that opening event with, to stand in a buffet line or to sit at a table with, Robertson said, rather than going to the opening reception on their own. We do little networking activities where we have some talk to each other. We show them how our polling system works and how our continuing ed credit system works. We also tell them about things that they may not know about, Robertson said, like where to get in line for a book signing and go for your free headshot. We're in the financial space and we have a lot of introverts join us. How do we make them feel comfortable as best we can, knowing that this is out of their comfort zone for many of them? First-timer sessions also give attendees an opportunity to buddy up with another conference newbie to experience the rest of the event together. Roundtables start on Sunday morning, organized around institution type. Are you a small institution, a research university, a community college? Robertson said. The roundtables are scheduled right before the main opening general session so that participants can walk in together to the large ballroom or auditorium. Once again, he said, we're trying to make it not be so overwhelming for them. 4 connect and collaborate sessions, 1 each for young professionals, LGBTQIA plus professionals, leaders of color, and women leaders are held during the expo time for an hour where they can meet together and find others in those groups, Robertson said. It doesn't matter what kind of institution you serve, or if you're a first-timer, or this is your 17th meeting. But if you identify with one of those groups, it's a way to meet others like yourself. Each group has its own scheduled time to meet in a room dedicated to these sessions, Duraco said, and there can be facilitators to get the conversation flowing. The constituent roundtables and the professional roundtables are facilitated a little bit differently, Robertson said. In our constituent roundtable groups for the last 2 years, we've gone with this brag, worry, wonder, bet concept, based on the book Brag, Worry, Wonder, Bet, A Manager's Guide to Giving Feedback. As in, I worry about this, I bet this would work. An added benefit to these sessions, senior leaders from the association who attend get to meet members and to hear what's on their minds. For our CEO to go to those sessions and meet people and hear from them their dreams and hopes and aspirations, and also their frustrations, that has been a really good thing, Robertson said. An emphasis on interactive sessions. There have been shifts in the kinds of programming people want to see since the pandemic, Robertson said. I'll ask, how was that session? And I've had people respond, it could have been a webinar. When they show up on site, yes, they want to hear from a speaker or a panel for a little while. But what they really want to do is connect with the people in the room to find out, what are you doing to solve this problem? Here's what's happening on my campus. What have you learned on your campus? The sessions that get rated the highest now are those that have that interactivity, that allow for that networking, that allow for that information exchange within the session. App gamification. Attendees get points towards earning prizes for visiting exhibitors, going to certain events, and stopping by the NACUBO central booth and having a conversation with the NACUBO staff. But NACUBO also has extended the game outside of our expo hall and expo time, Duraco said. And what we really have seen is people pairing up. That's how they're finding each other. In a gamification called the QR Quest, attendees have to find certain QR codes that they shoot on their phone and answer a question. Just from that simple act of trying to locate the sign with this QR code, they're meeting other people, she said. Last year, I saw teams of people walking around the convention center on this mission, helping each other to find and answer these questions. Leaning into connections. A session that served to reconnect attendees after the pandemic has become an essential element of the Exponent Philanthropy Annual Conference program. Exponent Philanthropy is an association of nearly 1,600 members who are lean funders, meaning almost all the members are very small organizations, with 3 out of 10 having no supporting staff at all. An inside joke of how the organization got its start almost 30 years ago, said Exponent Philanthropy Senior Director of Education Lauren Kotkin, is that someone sat at a conference with a sign that read, "Are you alone with millions?" Given the solitary nature of Exponent Philanthropy's members, connecting them is central to its strategic plan, and that emphasis is reflected in structuring Exponent Philanthropy Annual Conference's networking opportunities, she said, without being prescriptive. After the pandemic, our first meeting was in fall of 2022, Kotkin said. She realized that attendees couldn't launch right into the educational program without a buffer, she said. initially called R&R, Reconnection and Reflection Post-COVID, and changed to connection sessions the following year, the interactive session continues to be part of the conference program. Member volunteers with facilitating experience led small group conversations of between 25 to 50 people in the first session after the pandemic. The first question for round one was, it's 2035, and someone asks you, what is the one inspiring thing that really stands out for you from the pandemic time? It was open-ended, Kotkin said. They talked for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then I asked the facilitators to encourage people to get up and move around so they got a chance to meet other people. The second question was, how has COVID changed your foundation's priorities in any way? Then the third round was, how has COVID changed your thoughts about? I had a 2-page handout with a list of 20 different things it could be, she said. You could either talk about one of those things or come up with your own. There were 2 rounds of questions for the connection session in 2023, and participants used sticky notes to write down their responses to the second question. The first one posed this question: what trends are you seeing in the headlines that affect your philanthropic work, and how has that impacted what you're doing? For the second round, participants were asked to write down a practice or an efficiency that has changed in the past year. Everyone stood up, found a couple of people they didn't know, and then brought their sticky note with them and talked about their practice, Kotkin said. I encouraged people to put their names on it, and then we had a wall after that session where we organized them by taxonomy, including grant making, governance, admin, tax, and legal. We added the stickies there, and you could see people taking pictures and just chatting about it during the conference. Questions were chosen that everyone could answer, regardless of the nature of the philanthropic organization they represented. People really liked it, Kotkin said, and as a bonus, the sticky notes helped inform the staff on what's on their members' minds. At the end of the annual conference, participants are asked, do you feel more connected to your peers? Because we know from years of work that the more you feel like you have to share and give, the more connected you feel to the network, Kotkin said. Coming out of COVID, what's the value of a conference if I can sit through a webinar on that topic? I come to the conference to connect. We're even encouraging speakers to allow stopping points to ask the participants a question and let them chat with each other just for 2 or 3 minutes, so you feel like, oh, I've had a chance to connect with someone new.
If you enjoyed this episode, do give us a 5-star review and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. For more industry insights, visit pcma.org/convene. Until next time.